Good evening, Bulls fans. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. As always, I'm joined by John McWhinney. We are not on our regular Sunday time, but you can blame a weekend trip to New York City from me for that. That's also why we don't usually have all the recaps up as we normally would yesterday of the weekend's competition for UB. Normally, we're talking sports in the UB weekend on Sunday. This weekend, it's a Monday. We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to preview, so much so that we're not going to be able to preview everything that's coming up this week. We'll do it over the course of the week. Probably at least one more video, maybe two. For now, we've just got to catch up on everything because I went and didn't pay attention to sports for a weekend. Really busy weekend for UB. Both tennis teams in action. They got a couple wins. Softball had another 4 games after a weekend off. They got hard luck Friday, really good luck Saturday. Baseball, had lots of wins. They swept Tennessee Martin. Wrestling is waiting for next week's team championship, but John didn't come here to talk about nothing, so he's got something to say for wrestling. Mm-hmm. Then we had MAC championships for the women's swimming and diving team. They finished 4th. And for both the men's and women's track and field teams, the men finished 4th and the women's 6th. I don't actually have the swimming and diving school records totaled up, but we saw 3 new school records and 3 MAC champions on track and field. And individually 4 championships and relay-wise, I think just 1. I should be better than this. In the women's swimming and diving, and off the top of my head, at least 1 individual, 1 relay school record, but there should be more. I'll have to check it out later. Anyway, we have lots to talk about. I should let you talk, John, but we are going to start with softball. I don't know if that's something you want to start with or if you just want to let me.
No, I'll start with softball.
Okay.
So really the tale of 2 days when you look at it. Friday, they went 0-2, 3-1 loss to Quinnipiac, then 8-7 loss to Hampton. Really 12 great innings of pitching across the 2 games, and it was just one poor inning in each game that kind of swung the momentum in the favor of the other teams. Flip that over to Saturday. They absolutely crushed Rhode Island 13-5, and then beat Princeton 3-2 in 10 innings with only 1 earned run. So you can go ahead on that.
Yeah, I watched and covered the Friday games in real time. Saturday games I missed. Friday games were very, very frustrating. I think I haven't yet been able to shake this storyline of last year's team that lots of errors. We've seen fewer errors this year, but when they've come in a bunch. An inability to kind of stop a rally and some really inconsistent pitching. And the game against Quinnipiac was fine. I wasn't too down on a 3-1 loss. Sophomore Charlotte Miller got the start, which, okay, and she pitched real well. None of the 3 runs that she gave up in the second inning were earned. She brought UB into the 6th, down 3-1, and the offense just couldn't do it. They had the top of the order coming up in the 6th, and Savannah Norcio got on base, and then they bunted her over to second, and she got caught off the base on the play, and it was a double play, and that kind of was UB's last chance. Pulled Miller for Brianna Baker, I think, for the 7th inning of that game, and she closed it out, and UB lost 3-1. A little bit of a hard luck. They didn't get a hit till the 4th inning, but they had base runners in the last 4 innings. Couldn't push more than 1 across. None of the runs were earned. That's a bummer, but they were able to stay in it. Second game against Hampton, freshman Allie Power got the start. She gave up 3 runs early, at least 2 of them unearned. I think all 3 were unearned, again on some errors. UB had to crawl out of a hole. Courtney Gilbert and Katie Weimer, 2 freshmen, were the stars of this one. Gilbert had in consecutive at-bats a double and a triple. Weimer had a home run in there. Weimer scored Gilbert on a squeeze play. After the triple, definitely offensive stars in the game. They went into the 7th inning up 7-3. Allie Power had pitched 6 great innings. At least 2 of those 3 runs were unearned. She seems to be UB's best strikeout pitcher this year, at least so far. And Coach Peel put Bobby Langlois in to start the 7th, to bottom the 7th. And Langlois is perhaps the most experienced pitcher on the team. She pitched for the Bulls last year. She's the upperclassman. But she put the first 3 batters on, and then they brought power right back in. And strategically, you take a pitcher out and then come back to her and throw her in a no-outs, bases-loaded situation. That's not going to go too well no matter what. And she did well to get 2 outs, but then there were 2 further errors, not by the book errors, but miscues and mental mistakes by the middle of the infield, and Hampton ended up coming back and winning. In hindsight is 2020, but I was pretty frustrated by that, just because Power was pitching good. Like, let her close it out. I don't really know what's the decision making there is, unless you don't value the game too much, which maybe you don't. It's early season. You spend so much time on the road. It's not a great indicator anyway, and you're looking for a way to get Langlois some time. I was particularly interested because in those 2 games we didn't see freshman Lace Smith at all, and she came into the season as a really highly touted pitcher as a freshman. I thought she was going to be. We did see her against Rhode Island, and that was a 13-5. We didn't need her in that game. UB scored a ton of runs in the first couple innings. It was really the best offense I think we've seen really since the 2014 season. I'm sure that we scored 13 runs at some point last year, but did we ever do it in 5 innings and earn the mercy rule? I'm not sure. Really of note here, and this started with the Hampton game, but Savannah Norcia moved down from the top of the order to like the 2nd or 3rd spot. And last week, John, we were talking about how even though UB went 1-4, 1-5, 1-4 in their first weekend, Norcio hit like 600 from the leadoff spot. I was a little surprised to see them move Ashton Ehrenhardt up to the 1st and bring Norcio down, but what it does is it gives UB a more reliable middle of the order. And so now Norcio's hitting in front of, in front of Gilbert and Weimer and like Lalos and Kenzie Cook and things like that. You got a little bit more of a consistent, every time you go through yours, it's going to be a real tough spot. In this 13-5, she hit a 2-run homer in the first inning, and UB never really looked back. Katie, I think Lace Smith gave up like 4 earned runs in 4 innings or something like that. Not the best performance, but she didn't need it when you're scoring 13. And the highlight of the weekend was definitely the Saturday afternoon, the last one, 10 innings over Princeton, 3-2. Absolutely, the single game surprise of the season so far was this game. Another freshman pitcher, Brianna Baker. She's from Oneonta, New York. She like Katie Weimer. She's a local girl. Pitched all 10 innings. Finally let a pitcher pitch more than 6 innings in a game. Racked up 11 strikeouts. Only gave up 1 earned run. And extra inning games in softball and collegiate softball are really interesting because every extra inning is started immediately with a runner on second. And so you had, but to win, you've got to either stop the other team or turn a real rap. And second, gave up a ground out and had 1 out, runner on 3rd, and she got a fly out and a strikeout, all that UB needed to do. And it was Nicolette Jacobs who, hit the walk-off in the bottom. But without really being able to talk too much about how good any of these teams are quite yet, I think we'll be able to start making those decisions and start talking about that in the next week or so once every team's played enough. Really a solid weekend for UB. As far as we're concerned, still a young team that's growing. These are 4 good results. The end of the Hampton game is really frustrating, but they put together 7 runs. They were the better team for the majority of that game, both hitting and in defense. They just lost their composure late. They were able to hang with Quinnipiac, but for 1 inning of losing their composure, and they really came out on Rhode Island and Princeton, and were very clearly, the better team over Rhode Island, and did enough to win against Princeton. Really outperforming pitcher of the weekend. Not that we've seen anything from her to misjudge it, but last year we really kind of had Charlotte Miller and Bobby Langlois and a little bit of Haley Barrow. And with all credit to all 3 of those, none of them were Tori Speckman, who came before. And now this year, I'm not sure who I'd say are aces. When Miller's on, she's as good as Power. And and Power and Lace most weekends. Lace Smith most weekends put up pretty. I shouldn't say most. There's been 2 weekends. We've seen pretty similar numbers. And then Baker comes in on Sunday with the team tired at the end of their week and throws, I think, the best pitched game we've seen yet in 9 games from the Bulls. And so I think a lot of room for excitement from this weekend. The offense really put up some runs, also played in some tight games. I don't still have the box scores open, but I think the error numbers weren't too bad on Saturday. I think against Rhode Island we only had 1 error, and against Princeton, all the things I've talked about with this team, over the last 15 months, we can kind of see that it's going away. It might not be gone entirely as we saw against Hampton. But the issues of last year, there's a very clear, I can look up and down the lineup and say, here are people who will address these issues and will improve over last year, whether it's the same players improving or it's freshmen who are coming in and really providing instant impact.
Mm-hmm.
That was longer than I meant it to be.
Well, we might as well move on because we got
a lot.
Yeah, we
got a lot to say.
So little to do and so much time to do it. Not strike that, reverse it. That's Willy Wonka for those of you who didn't have a childhood.
I was just gonna say for the people who are either not yet 10.
So I guess we'll move on to the other diamond sport, baseball, which coming into this weekend they were still winless, having given up something like 26 runs to only scoring 3.
Yeah, I think
in their first weekend out, and then we saw progressively better offensive games as the weekend went on. With the real big highlight being on Sunday, which I'm sure we'll get to soon enough. It's the second straight week we've seen the same 3-man pitching rotation. Looks to have improved somewhat. And they got 3 wins over the weekend to even the record at 3-3. I wish I had a broom. Fun, but they swept Tennessee Martin.
I half expected you to pull out like this little dinky like dustpan and like. Yeah, sweeps are.
Sweeps are great. Do you know what's even better than a sweep?
A cycle.
A cycle.
Yes. Yeah. We should say who had the cycle. It was Vinny Milaro in the Sunday game. What was interesting about these games, and I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad, they were all wins, progressively higher scoring. UB took advantage of a lot of errors from Tennessee Martin, and Tennessee Martin also put a lot of guys on base, which if you walk a bunch of guys and then somebody also hits for the cycle, like each of those 4 at-bats, he didn't earn a walk. And so everyone else was walking around him. I should actually see how many RBIs he had.
In that game, he had 5.
Oh. It feels like let's get him to hit for another one so he can have more than 5 in his next one. Oh, God damn. I don't know why we abbreviate baseball as BSB instead of BASE. UBBulls.com webmasters. Let's make this more intuitive, please. Just also, while we're at it, can we not call it WV ball? We only have 1 volleyball team. We can just call it V-ball. And I think rowing is the same way. Little nitpicky things. 5 RBIs. So really interesting. I mean, not interesting at all, but beat Tennessee Martin 5-3. Next game beat him 8-5. Next game beat him 15-8. There's a math nerd joke in there somewhere. It's really good to see them. Obviously, it's hard to do. It's hard to score 15 runs without doing this, but it's good to see them put up, a bunch of numbers at once, crooked numbers, as we might call them, having multiple innings of 3 runs and an inning of 5 runs. With Nick Sene last year, when they did score, it was, scrapping a run, getting a guy on base, moving around. I think that Tim has talked about this lineup maybe being a little less reliable, every time through. And so it's good to see crooked numbers go up. It means they're taking advantage of their chances. It's something that there are a lot of guys on base. I don't have any numbers for that off the top of my head. Real quick, also want to point out that Micah Brunzo and Andrew Taft also hit home runs in that 15-8 game, in addition to Millar's cycle. It's good to see people hit home runs. Should have more to say about baseball, but I do not, John.
I'm just trying to find stats from last year because I don't recall very many home runs being hit.
No. It would have. I think a Brunzo would have led the team last year in home runs.
And they've already hit four home runs this year, with 3 coming in that last game that we talked about on Sunday.
I'm pretty sure these are stats right now. Home runs. Sobraski had 4, Brunzo had 3, Millar had 3, Mitch Machi had 2, and then Sine, Benvey, Don Killian, Brian Dudek, and Eddie Edwards had 1. 17 total. They gave 30. We're on a better pace this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a much better pace this year. Last year, what was the slugging percentage as a whole last year? 337. That's not very good.
And they're at 348.
Okay, well that's better.
And they're batting collectively 251.
Yeah, that could be better, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's baseball. Tim is kind of our baseball expert. Maybe we'll have to bring him on these shows. Maybe we'll just have to not go to New York City and be better prepared for our weekly shows. With that, it's John's favorite time of the week. Wrestling didn't even compete, and he's got people to talk about. I'm going to step away and get some water. Take it away, John.
Oh, okay. So while Matt's away doing what he does, the wrestling team doesn't compete until this upcoming weekend at the MAC Championships, which, due to our time constraint here, we'll have a preview video hopefully Thursday. We'll have a special show. We'll come on. Matt and I will come on and talk all things wrestling. I'll have a written preview up, and everyone can follow along on there while we talk about that. The big thing that happened this weekend was Nate Rose competed in the Pan American Wrestling Championships, and welcome back, Matt.
Thank you.
And he finished 4th, improving on his 5th place finish from last year. And he didn't get a win, but
I know. I was so excited when he said he made the bronze medal match, and then I read the recap. And I was like, wait a minute. He didn't win anything.
Yeah, the brackets were a little screwy like that. But in his first match, he faced a guy from Venezuela who happened to be a former Olympian, competed in the 2012 Olympics in London.
Which is decent competition.
I mean, for a college freshman who hasn't really had any Division I experience other than open tournaments, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Then the bronze medal match, he took on a guy from Team USA who he wrestled for Minnesota, was a 3-time All-American, and lost there. And I mean, it's international competition. It's just not easy. But he is, I believe it's this weekend as well. It's going on the same time as the MAC tournament. There's a Pan Am Olympic Games qualifying tournament that's going on where countries who haven't filled their quota for the Olympic Games, they can send people to the tournament, and if if you finish top 2 in that tournament, you qualify for Rio. I assume the field's will be a little bit bigger than the Pan Am Championships, so we'll see about that. I'd say it's more for just getting experience, but as we've seen happen throughout this season, anything can happen in the sport of wrestling. I mean, James Benjamin wasn't supposed to pin Sean Scott,
That is true.
Nate Rose, who knows what could happen. He has just as good a chance as anyone else of qualifying for the games, and if he did,
then we'd be pretty thrilled.
Very thrilled.
Yeah.
So that's all I had for wrestling. I already plugged
great.
the preview for the MAC championships.
Great.
So
we'll be doing that later in the week once Matt learns more about wrestling. I can talk about UB plenty. I just need to pay attention to what Northern Iowa will bring to the table. A lot of good wrestlers, and what Missouri will bring to the table. A lot of good wrestlers, and think about potential matchups and things. Speaking of MAC championships, season that starts on October 1st is finally over for at least half of the swimming and diving team. The women of UB swimming and diving competed in their MAC championships this past week, over the course of the week, 4 days. Finished 4th for at least the second straight year. This was the second. I honestly don't know further back. The names you would expect and the events you would expect. Meg itself, she did not break a school record, but in the 200 freestyle relay, she swam the opening leg, and the opening legs of relays count towards records because they are still on a gun start, and she broke the UB and the MAC record in the 50 free. And while she did not hit an NCAA A cut, the feeling within the program is that she's got a pretty good chance of being invited even on the B cut. The way that works is A cuts are an automatic invitation to the NCAA championships, and each event has a certain number of slots, and if not enough people hit the A cuts, they backfill with the B cuts. And for the most part, B cuts in our world are not super meaningful, other than that they're a nice benchmark, because most 90% of slots are filled with A cuts. But the feeling is that she's going to get an invite to the national championships, which would make her the first since Brittany Curris to do so for UB. Other name that you'd expect, other events that you'd expect, Jess Powers won her 3rd straight MAC championship in the 500, also won the MAC championship in the 1650. As at least her 2nd, her 3rd straight in that as well. And UB won the 800 freestyle relay. Burns, Baxter, Powers, and Carrie Giovanniello, names that you'd expect. 2 sprinters, 2 distance, lots of winning there. They broke the UB school record in that event. Otherwise, kind of the storylines for this MAC championships, John, was UB lost one of their best swimmers of all time to graduation in Spencer Rodriguez, and are also coming off a year in which they dominated last year in the freestyle events and really struggled to put up any points in all the other disciplines. This year, I was looking for improvement in those other disciplines and hoping that the freestyle dominance would continue. Not quite as great in the freestyle, even though in addition to Burns and Powers, who were both named first team All-MAC, Penn State transfer Sarah Baxter had a ton of strong performances in the sprints, and sophomore Hannah Miller had real good performances in the distance freestyle, were both named second team All-MAC. The non-freestyle disciplines, we did earn more points than last year. I don't think it was as impressive a showing as I was hoping for. I think there were some folks who were seeded. Seedings are so arbitrary because everyone takes 3-4 weeks off just to train and get into best shape for this. But we had some folks who I expected to make the finals who did not. And so I'll have to look it up. But again, finished 4th, closer narrowly to 5th than to 3rd. Real big surprise for me, John, was the diving.
Yeah, actually,
I caught you there.
I don't. Swimming is interesting to me, especially diving, because it seems like the scores are so kind of, I don't want to say arbitrary.
If you don't know the system.
Obviously I don't know the system that well, but watching it on ESPN3 the first night, then I caught a little bit of it on the second night. I was impressed, especially with the girl from Miami who had who the announcers who were not that great.
Wait, do you mean that announcers shouldn't need to tell us that the person who touches the wall first? Because like it was important to know that the person who touches the wall first is the winner.
Yeah.
These are important insights in the world of swimming and diving. Sorry, we were talking about diving.
You know, they touted this girl. I forget her name. The one from Miami who ended up winning.
Pinlay.
Yes. And then I saw the UB divers, and I was impressed with how well they did. I know we had spoken before about how diving wasn't necessarily a strength of either the men's or the women's teams, and to see them come out and do well, it sure impressed me.
Yeah, absolutely. We did get a new diving coach this year. I don't think we spent too much time talking about it at all on the blog, but we got a new diving coach. I was thinking that between the 1 meter and 3 meter dives, we'd get, one person into the finals, and we'd have 4 or 5 in the consolation, which is easier to do in diving just because there's fewer divers than in any swimming event. But we ended up having 3 finalists. Mackenzie Moss made the finals in both the 3 meter and the 1 meter. And Abby Croat, I don't actually know her last name. The announcers flipped from saying it Croce like the singer to Croak. But Abby got into the consolation of the 3 meters and the finals of the 1 meter. And she ended up winning the consolation of the 3 meter dive there by like 0.2 of a point over someone from Eastern Michigan or Ohio. And then I honestly can't remember if it was the 1 meter or 3. Moss finished third in one of them. And so UB in the 1 meter alone racked up more points. They also had someone in the consolation of the 1 meter finish 7th. I apologize. I don't remember who it is. In the 1 meter alone, they scored more points in the diving events they did in both diving events in 2015. And then in the 3 meter, they won the consolation and had Moss was seeded 8th and moved up. I think that was the one she finished 3rd because she was 8th after the prelims and moved all the way up, really scoring about the same number of points, and everyone else kind of was unable to match her prelim numbers and fell down as Moss moved up. And so really all I know about diving and how to evaluate is that a big splash is bad and that it's good to go into the water straight. And relatively you can see that. Cannot count the twists, I can't count those things. I do it. X Games too are difficult to count them. But absolutely an improvement over last year, certainly enough that I don't think any team gained on UB in the diving events, which was an issue last year. Last year, UB had a stronger freestyle performance, so they were sitting in better shape midway through the 3rd day. And then as the diving happened, Eastern Michigan, who ended up finishing 2nd, and Miami, who UB did end up finishing in front of both years. Eastern Michigan and Miami scored a ton of points in the diving last year. This year, I don't think UB lost any ground to anyone in the diving, which is substantial. That's good. That's what you hope from your depth in any discipline. So a 4th place finish for the women. We think that Megan Burns will continue her season. She also swam and hit an Olympic trial cut separate from the MAC championships at an Olympic trial thingy being held at Bowling Green still on Sunday. We don't know what will come out of that, but it's news that we're kind of paying attention to. Men's swimming and diving championships are this week, same schedule. They are not at Bowling Green. I think they're hosted at the Spire Institute or by Ohio. I can tell you right now because I should have had it up.
And while Matt's doing that, I just wanted to make one comment about swimming and diving. just something that annoys my engineer brain is that in college they use yards for the
And high
in-pool
school.
events
And high school for what
in
it's
high
worth.
school. But the graphics on ESPN read them as meters.
Because professionally, internationally, they use meters.
Yes, and the mixing of imperial and metric units absolutely, positively drives me insane.
The good news, John, is that no collegiate swimmers are in charge of a Mars rover. Was it a
This is
Mars rover?
true.
Do you know this? Do you know this story? Maybe it wasn't a Mars rover. Maybe it was something else.
Yeah, where they screwed up pounds and kilograms, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and the thing like crashed and like
yeah, it was a satellite. It was a
thousands of miles from Earth. It was then just useless.
yep, yeah, yeah. So quick science lesson for so, while Matt's still looking it up. So basically,
No, I'm
what
not.
happened?
I just wanted to make
Uh,
sure you got your say in. The men's swimming and diving championships are hosted by Eastern Michigan. UB, the men have a very different kind of contour to their team. They have a top elite level sprinters in Antonio Lanzi and Aaron Durrance, as the women do. They have stronger depth in other things. Mason Miller in the butterfly is going to be very strong. Itai De La Vega in the breaststroke will be very strong. The question for them will not be can they score points at every discipline, as the women were unable to last year and were slightly improved on this year. It will be can they score, how many places can they get multiple finalists? You know, how many places can someone join Mason Miller in the fly? What can they do in the longer freestyle where Reed Zinnicke, Charles Berry, and Billy Patram, are all kind of very similar in kind of the longer events, and can all of them, one or two of them get into the final. We'll have more in the way of a preview of that later in the week. I might just do a video for that on my own rather than having to type it all up. We'll see what happens. But that's happening this week. Pretty much the same schedule as the women's one. We'll have nightly check-ins and be tweeting as we're able to follow with the rest of our schedules. John, I had dialed up track and field next to the MAC championships, but I feel we should finish with the MAC championships. So, tennis.
all right, yeah, we can move on to tennis.
Perfect weekend.
Perfect weekend. Perfect by I don't want to say a landslide isn't.
No, they went out and just took care of business.
Yeah,
So each team on Friday went against Youngstown State, and the men got a 5-2 win. The women got a 6-1 win. And that's good, all well and good. I think both teams won the way we'd hope. Got 3 points from their 1, 2, and 3 singles. We think that this is the strength of both teams. On the men's side, Amar Hromic, Pablo Alvarez, and Ethan Nittolo. Although Sergio's been up at 3 lately. So Sergio at number 3, but either or. On the women's side, Tanya Stoyanowska, Margarita Kotak, Chantel Martinez-Blanco. Although this week, Kotak and Diana Gasieva did not compete in either the doubles or the singles against Youngstown State. And I think the women did drop the doubles point against Youngstown State. And I think if up till this point, Gasieva and Kotak have been the number 1 doubles team, and we saw some shuffling there, and I wonder if that had to do with it. But another win for both there on Friday. Really no issues. The women swept the singles. The losses for men's singles came at number 4 and number 5. And then on Saturday, the women got a 6-1 win over Binghamton. They won the doubles point. That one was extremely narrow. Both 1 and 3 doubles went to tiebreakers. They won 5 of the 6 singles matches, of course. This time, again, strength at the top of the order. They won 1 through 5. And even though Binghamton isn't in the MAC for the women,
it's always good to beat Binghamton.
It's not just good. It is.
It's great.
I was going to say it's our primary goal in life, but I think great makes us sound a little less petty. It's good to beat Binghamton in anything and everything we possibly can. We should create cricket teams and find money for fencing triathlon, just so that we can beat Binghamton and more things.
Fencing create just seems a bit too snobbish, doesn't it?
I don't know. In college, I roomed with a fencer.
Oh.
He was not on scholarship. He was a walk-on fencer.
Hmm.
I'm showing my my non-UB. It's just it takes money to do. Unlike like running, you barely even need, you just need shoes. And like soccer, you can like take a pig splatter and blow it up into a ball and play soccer. But we can beat Binghamton in anything because we dislike them very much. Even if they're not in the MAC and women's tennis, the men face on this coming weekend, and it is in the MAC, and it is a rematch of last year's conference championship, and one of the greatest comebacks you've never heard about, unless you've been following our podcast for a year and reading all our stuff, in which case we really appreciate it, because we just like to talk sports, and if other people do too, that's wonderful. We'll close out the show with track and field, who, unlike swimming and diving, have a combined MAC championship. Both the men and the women went. This is indoor track and field. They will basically take 2 weeks off and immediately start competing outdoors in the run-up to the outdoor championships in May. Swimming and diving, at least, UB can be competitive with the rest of the MAC, even if their team is slightly smaller. In track and field, they just kind of have fewer people, period. And so we really end up looking to one or two folks in each event to perform as strong as they can, whereas other teams can talk the way we do in swimming and diving, of having not just Megan Burns, but Megan Burns and Sarah Baxter and Carrie Giovanniello and Jess Powers all going to the 200, and not in track and field, we don't really have that depth. And especially on the men's side, they finished 4th this year. They did it without Ryan Billy in long jumping. I don't think Ryan Billy even sprinted. They did it without Mike Morgan in the heptathlon, excuse me. Mike Morgan took the indoor season off. So none of him in the pole vault, none of him in the high jump, none of him in the heptathlon, Jesus Christ. These are things that could help. And if we brought our full talent, it would be marginally better. But the men finished until we get a substantially larger team, we're only ever going to be looking at 1 or 2 people per event. That said, John, we've been talking all winter about our sprinting depth and how exciting it is to have real solid sprinters, broken a bunch of school records. And we saw this weekend one sprinting school record fall, and MAC championships in the shortest races of the whatchamajigger meet. UB won both the 60 women's 60-meter dash, and the men's 60-meter dash. These are events that are usually dominated by Akron and Kent State, and on the women's side in particular, Northern Illinois usually has real strong sprinters. And Malaya White broke her school record twice in the 60. She had set it earlier this season. Darian Johnson had set the school record in the 60 earlier this season. He did not set a new one this weekend, but he also won. This is the first time ever that UB's won a 60-meter dash period, and they won 2 in the same meet. And so I think we to the shot put, and we know that's going to be solid. We know that UB has some kind of guys that can compete in the jumping events, and we know that we've got distance runners who, while they might not be able to beat Akron's Clayton Murphy, who may very well qualify for the Olympics for America someday, we got guys in mid-distance who can put up real high things. But this season, the sprinters have really just been an absolute pleasant surprise, and it paid off this weekend.
That did. I think what kind of got lost in talking about the sprinters is that, did you mention the DMR record?
I did not mention the DMR record. I was gonna.
Yep.
I want to talk about field events, so you talk about anything you want.
Well,
I
guess I'll talk about the DMR. They finished 3rd, but they set a new school record, and Brian Crimmins ran, I think it was a mile time that would have broken the school record by about 3 seconds. I think it was a 4:03. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he closed the distance medley relay in a 4:03 mile, which is pretty good. And like you said, it would have broken his own school record, which he's lowered twice this year, by 3.5 seconds.
And he finished second in the mile with a 4:08. I can only dream of running that fast.
I knew a guy in high school who ran a 4:07, and it's kind of scary to see it like in real life.
Tyler Sheving and Thomas Meehan.
Yeah, I've been pronouncing it Meehan. I don't know.
They were third and sixth respectively in the 800.
And Meehan had a great season in the 800. Like,
really underrated.
yeah, I mean, well, he I don't know. Like, I don't know how to talk about folks who make improvements, because I don't want to say they were slow before. He wasn't slow. He was way faster than I ever was. But like, Meehan was not one of UB's varsity 7 in cross country. He hasn't been. Sheving and Crimmins have been. Barrett Kemp, who ran in the 5,000, Andrew Burge ran in the 5,000, have been. And we saw, I brought this up last week, we saw this last year with Amy Shaw. She had a great indoor and outdoor track season, and this year she was really consistently UB's third best cross-country runner in the fall. And Meehan has brought his 800 time down by like 4 or 5 seconds in the last year, which when you're talking, I mean, you're talking a 152, that's 112 seconds. So 5 seconds is that's like 4% in a single year. That's a huge improvement. And so, I mean, I'm really excited to see what comes of that, because any of these events you get above 800 meters, it's Eastern Michigan and Akron. And like, in particular, so to have 3 guys in the top, maybe it wasn't 3, maybe it was 2, but to have Meehan, at number 6 behind Sheving and Crimmins as they, figure out how they can score the most points in the 800,000 a mile, that's just a really solid improvement. Next August, when we do our day-by-day Olympic sports previews, like, Meehan is going to be on the list, because regardless of what happens this spring season, because his indoor season has been so, it's been so impressive, the amount of time he's cut and how consistent he's been. So, I mean, track and field's hard to talk about sometimes, but Meehan is definitely a name that we're going to want to remember. He's had a great year so far.
Mm-hmm. And the last kind of group is the throwers, who were solid as per usual, really.
Yep.
Ryan Cribben took home the gold, which we were talking before the show. How many in a row was that? How many champions?
7 on the shot put, but the last 6 were all John Jones. So let's make sure that Cribben wins it again next year and Patterson starts to win it the year after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll really be able to talk about it as a streak.
And a name we have talked about before, Meg Patterson.
On the women's side.
2 bronze medals in the weight throw and the shot put, with a season best in the shot put. And I'm not sure if the weight throw was a season best.
It was. And she did it on her very last one. And I think she moved up from 5th or 6th to 3rd with that last weight throw, which is real solid. She's someone I think we should be excited about. She's Otto. She transferred in from Central Florida. I knew she had some pedigree that, like, whether we had gone after her or she came to Jim Garnham, she's someone who can be a real. She's already a junior, so we'll see how she comes together, over her last 3 seasons here. But UV's got a real good crop of kind of younger women's throwers that are starting to put some results down this year. The only other group I want to talk about track and field wise, we've covered all the champions and all the school records, but I've kind of kept referring all season to the jumpers and say we've got strong jumpers. These guys all had strong days, even for the fact that they were strong. In the triple jump, it's been Kaishan Cathy all year, but it was Austin Ashby who, got to almost 15 meters in triple jump. He placed sixth. In the high jump, I've been excited about Hassani Rathan, who was the reigning New York State high school champion last year. He's a freshman now. He's been consistently jumping over 2 meters. He did that again, but Laurent Durr also joined him jumping over 2 meters, and I think his personal best up till now was 2.01. He's kind of maxed out at 1.94, 1.98 a couple times this year. So some real solid results from the men's jumpers. On top of that, pole vaulter Daniel Normoyle had a big time personal season best this year, or in this meet, to get up all the way up to fourth, I think. Let me find his name very quickly. Fourth overall with a personal best height. Austin Ashby had a season best in a long jump, over 7.5 meters. Just a really solid day from a group that I've already been talking up as solid in the men's jumpers. And those are the types of situations where, like I said when we started this section, track and field is a point of disadvantage for UB, just like baseball is, in that we can get people here and we can turn them in some majors, well, not the majors, but into pro baseball and drafted. But they're underfunded compared to the rest of the conference, both in facilities and scholarships available. And track and field, while I don't think there may be a scholarship disparity, they just do not have the numbers that other teams in the conference do. And so even if they've got somebody in every event who can place top 3, they don't have somebody else in every event who can also place top 8. But we continue to see great things out of the shot put. All the names we expected to do well did do well. Really the only person who I think, Kamaria Long, I was expecting her to show up and win the 200 because she won it last year and just hadn't competed in it much this year. But even that's not a huge disappointment. But I think everyone that we've been talking about this year stepped up and had a big day and had their best day so far at the MAC championships over the weekend. And so the curves are a little wider, and so you can run a little faster. The outdoor seems to be better for field events, and I really don't know why. I still haven't put it together. Both the throws and the jumps, people seem to do better outdoors. Haven't figured out why, other than the occasional small tailwind. But definitely a season. It's a fun team to track, even if kind of a hope of a MAC championship on the team level is tough to justify. Lots of names. We hope Mike Morgan is competing in the spring. I don't know if he's just taking the whole year off and he'll use his final year of eligibility next year or what, but he's a national title contender in the decathlon. Whenever he finishes his indoor eligibility, well, it will have to be next year. He's a national title contender in the heptathlon. Just like John Jones last year, we've got guys who can compete on that level. It's just a matter of getting more of them. But absolutely, track and field weekend here. Team level, it's easy to look at that and not be too happy, but individual level, look at, really great to see. That's just about an hour, John. We have hyped more MAC championships on the way. We will have a show talking wrestling preview. I will have something in the next 36 hours, whether it's an article or a standalone video talking men's swimming and diving preview. We've got more tennis this weekend, more baseball this weekend, more softball this weekend. And that's it. Made it through February. February is always the toughest month because you got the winter sports finishing up and the spring sports starting. I mean, we also have basketball, but we don't talk about that on this show. Rowing will start someday, and we won't really know how to talk about them, but we'll try. I feel so bad for rowing. Like, I don't think either of our two viewers right now are rowing affiliated. but it's hard to talk about them because the names don't really stand out. They all get in a boat and they row, and then there's a time, and then that time stacks up against other people, and that's kind of the whole story. But we're definitely, strange to say, considering it's still February, it might snow again here in Washington, D.C., but we're definitely hitting the lazier home stretch of the year. And my annual June break is in sight. I can't wait. But we will be back next week. We will spend most of our time on the Wrestling MAC Championships. We'll also talk Swimming and Diving MAC Championships, and we'll make sure to be up to date on everything else. For John McWhinney, I'm Matt Kritzenmacher. We are ubbullrun.com. Thanks for joining us on this special one-day delayed time this weekend. Next weekend, we will be back on Sunday at our usual time, Sundays, 10 p.m. Have a good one.